Hello, and thank you for coming back and joining me again today for another daily drawing. Today we're just going to be drawing really simple circular shapes, and we're going to be using a red onion as our inspiration. I'm going to be drawing today with some felt tip pens in purple and in yellow, but if you haven't got pens like this, then any non-permanent pen, any black ink pen would be great. In the second part, I'm going to be putting some water on top of my drawing, so if you've got a paintbrush, a little pot of water and some tissue or kitchen roll, that would be perfect. Don't worry if you haven't got those things, you could do this in coloured pencil, in crayons, in biro pen, whatever you can lay your hands on. So remember our two important rules. First of all, process over outcome. We're not actually drawing a red onion today, we're just thinking about drawing very simple circular shapes, which is really calming and relaxing, so really just enjoy the process of making the pattern. And second of all, draw with me and not like me, so don't try and copy my drawing. Let's just draw along together, enjoying 20 minutes of peace and relaxation, taking our focus away from everything else that's going on today. So go and grab the materials that you'd like to use today and your beverage of choice, and I'll see you in a row. So we're going to start today with a pencil, and I just got a normal HB pencil, and let's just draw a frame for ourselves, roughly in the same proportion as the image, but really don't worry because we're not going to copy the image, it's just going to be our reference. And you don't even really have to have a perfect rectangle in any way. As you can see, mine is a little bit wonky, but there we go. So we'll get your rough rectangle in, and then we're going to be using some felt tip pens today. If you've just got a black pen, that's absolutely fine, but I've got some of these barrel felt tips. Actually a broader one might be better, but I've just got the fine ones, and I've got purple here, but you could do yours just in black and white and it will work just as well, and I'll explain as we go along. So I've got a yellow and a purple that I'm going to use. If you've got colouring pencils you can use those too, crayons, whatever you like. So first of all, I'm looking at putting in the middle parts of the onions, and in some places you can see that there's almost like a little double, sometimes they're just a simple circle. So I'm going to put a few different types of shape in there, and again I'm not copying the image in any way, but I'm just using that as a little bit of a reference. So pop in some little yellow circles, and then grab your purple pen or your purple pencil, or as I said, if you just have black, that's fine. Everything can be in black and white also, and that will work really well. And I'm just slowly drawing some circles. So you just draw some circles round the middle yellow circle. As you can see, these are not actually circles at all, in the same way as they aren't actually in the reference photo either. So they might be a little closer together in some places, a little further apart. You can draw as many as you want. I've just put 4 in for my first one. I might add more. You can adjust as you go along. So I'm just going to space out another centre point and then add in some more rings. And I'm drawing these quite slowly because I quite enjoy just making big round loops. And I'm keeping my hand quite steady actually, and I'm moving round with the pen. And as this is not in any way planned out, you can see just meeting the other circle, and you can decide whether you want it to overlap one way or another, or whether you want them to meet perfectly. You can see in a picture some of them are sitting slightly on top of each other. So just really whatever you fancy. So now I'm going to do a little one, so a bit less of a circle. And yeah, I think I will just, looking at this one here, this sort of weird longer shape. We're not aiming for any sort of perfection because there's no perfection in the original onion, as with all natural forms. So it's great so we can make ours just however we want. So just draw your circles in at your own pace. You can put them quite close together or space them out a bit more. but actually I quite like to put them quite close together. I think it worked quite well visually. And I'm going to make this one larger. So you carry on filling your frame with these little middles and rings. So as you get to the edge of your frame, you can decide how you want to finish, and you can think about whether you want them to overlap like these or underneath. I'm going to put my one underneath. So just let it grow organically. Don't try and plan anything out. Just draw them as you go. And I'm going to make these ones a little thicker because you can see in the image that some of the tones are a little darker, so I'm going to double up the thickness here. So just think about how you're fitting these shapes together and just enjoying how they sort of fit within the frame. There's no neatness, there's no worry about whether it looks like an onion ring. That's not actually our concern at all. Enjoy drawing the shapes, drawing fast if you want to, or going slower, more carefully. Thinking about how close together you want to put those lines, or how you might want to space them out a little more. Having some that are large. I'm going to make this one really very big. And then you can have some smaller ones. I'm just going to put another line in here, just so they're not too spaced out. So I'm just looking now at maybe thickening in and darkening in some of the areas, but not all. A little like there are some darker and some lighter ones in the image. And then if you can, now is the time to grab your paintbrush and you can just make a little line to the side, and what you can see is if you dip your brush in some water and then just dry it a little bit on your tissue, you can actually make your felt pens run a little and just move some of the ink colour around. And this will work with any pen as long as it's not a permanent marker pen or a biro, but most ink pens you can do this, so you can have a little go and see if it'll work even on your black and white image if that's what you're doing. And this helps me just to kind of soften in the edges, and there's no special technique that I want to use here. I'm just really just blurring the lines, so you can see that sometimes the brush will actually hold a fair bit of the ink, and actually you might want to just dampen it down again. And it depends on how dark or light you want to make your rings, and obviously the ones that have got more ink on them, where I've doubled the lines, then I can make those ones a lot darker. So if you're doing this in colour, just be careful that you don't want to mix your yellow with your purple, because yellow and purple are complementary and they'll make brown. But you can think about just softening the edges. Just keep your brush damp, not soaking wet. If your brush is too wet, then you will lose a little control over where the water goes, and you might want to just keep some of the lines so they don't disappear completely. But just put, if you can, some water down, any brush, any size. And you can see I just dip my brush in the water, dampen it on the kitchen roll. And then just move my ink around a little. So there might be spots where you want it actually to be a little lighter and maybe actually not to put much or any water onto your drawing. So I'm just putting a little bit on the yellow, but as you'll find, some felt tips and some colours are easier to sort of dissolve in the water than others, and the yellow's a little bit harder to dissolve, but I'm just softening it a little bit. And then what you can find you can do, if you have a different colour, if you're using the colours, or you can still just keep using your black if you're just using black and white, but I'm going to take a blue here and I'm actually going to use this like a little watercolour palette. So I'm making a layer of ink on my paper and I'm going to use that as if I had a little bit of watercolour paint here. So damp brush, not wet, just damp, lift up a little bit of the blue onto my brush, and then you can see that I can put it onto the paper, and then clean damp brush I can actually move it around, taking a little bit as I need it. If I want the colour to be stronger, take a little more, and then I can just fade it off as well with just the damp brush if I need to. And I'm just putting a little bit of a blue tone. You can see how I can just put a little colour down and just blend with the damp brush, move it around before it dries. I'm keeping it very soft in most of the areas. So I'm just putting some little darker points in, just varying it a little bit. So my paper is slightly damp, this works well. But if you're using a thinner paper, just be careful not to make it overly wet. You might end up lifting up the surface if you go too much with your brush. And I'm thinking now that I might just darken some areas a little more. So I'm going to put a little palette of purple on and also a little bit of black. And if you are just using black and white, just a black pen, then you continue with the same. But obviously make more little palettes as you use up all of the ink from the little square that you've scribbled with. So I'm thinking about some of these darker areas. I'm just going to put those in a little darker, but I'm going to be careful not to go too black with it, because I want to keep this quite bright and colourful. And I can also take a bit of the purple if I want to, and put that in. And that stops me from making my lines disappear too much. If I don't want to blur the lines of my pen too much, I can also just use my purple little scribble and dip into that now and again. So I'm just thinking about which ones I'd like to be a bit darker, the ones that maybe I put the thicker pen on. But I'm also thinking about keeping them perhaps more to the edge of the frame and keeping the ones in the middle without any black in them. So you don't have to go all the way around each circle, just a little bit on an end will do. So I'm just getting a bit more black because the palette's a little dry. Eventually you take all the ink off of the paper. Might be a bit left, we'll see. So I'm just going around the top edge here rather than all the way around. So I'm going to make this one of my darkest ones because it's in the corner. I'm going to put a bit more black on this one. So I think I'm just going to add a little bit more back in with my pen, just to some of the spots where I've lost the lines a little bit. And I'm going to try not to do too much, but I just want to put some of those lines back in. But of course, you make the decision on your image what you'd like to do. But just some places where I put quite a lot of water down and I've lost my lines. Now that it's dry, and this doesn't work so well if your paper is really wet, as you'll end up tearing your paper, but now that mine are dry, I'm just going to put some lines back in. So you decide when yours is finished. But I'm quite enjoying this, and I'm just going to put some of these circular shapes back in a little bit more. So I should really stop there, but I'm enjoying it an awful lot and I want to keep doing it. So maybe I'd suggest to you, if you're the same, that you can always do a second, a third, as many as you like, different colours, maybe try different media. But I'm going to stop there with mine. I'm not worried about whether it looks like an onion. I'm just happy with the colours and the shapes. I hope you enjoyed that drawing, and I'd really love to see all of your fabulous patterns, so you can send them to me on Instagram at The City Workshop, on Facebook or on Twitter. All the details are below. So that's it for this week. Thank you to everyone who's sent me messages. It's been so nice to read all of your lovely comments, and I hope you'll join me again and keep me company next week in a bit more daily drawing. So have a great weekend and I'll see you next week.